Now, Anthony Albanese is denying a rift with Tanya Plibersek after he killed off her environmental laws. But this saga is a fascinating insight into how the Prime Minister does business, into his lies and obfuscation. WA Premier Roger Cook said that he spoke to Albanese on Tuesday and received an assurance that these laws would be on ice.
We were concerned in relation to some of the elements of the nature positive laws, and we made that position very clear. I'm very pleased to have received assurances from the highest levels of government that those laws will not be going ahead in their current form this week.
So the WA Premier saying pretty clearly there for everyone to see at a press conference that Albanese agreed to put these laws on ice. The understanding is that they would have been problematic politically at both the state and federal level in WA. So Albanese made this decision, apparently, without consulting the minister in charge, Tanya Plibersek, who'd been negotiating in good faith with the Greens. Albanese tried to deny all of this, but 7:30 host Sarah Ferguson pushed him repeatedly, as she does in her persistent way.
You killed the environmental laws promised at the last election in order to, as we understand it, protect seats in Western Australia. Was that you just clearing the decks for an election?
No, well, that's not right. The legislation remains stuck in the Senate. We didn't have a majority for it, Sarah. There's a range.
But you killed the negotiations.
No.
So what did you say when the Premier of Western Australia rang you or you spoke to the Premier of Western Australia to talk about that bill and why it should be held up?
I spoke to the Premier of WA about my visit to WA next week.
You didn't talk about the bill?
That was the basis. Well, I don't give all the details of my private discussions with premiers.
In talking about the bill, what did you say? Did you agree with him that it was not the right moment for that bill to be concluded?
No. I informed him that we didn't have the numbers.
So how did the Premier of Western Australia reach the conclusion that he had been instrumental in stopping that bill being resolved this week?
That's a question for the Premier. He's a good friend of mine.
And that went on. So Albanese reluctantly admitted there that he had spoken to Roger Cook about this, but denied it was the reason he killed off the deal. He even denied that the laws were permanently done and dusted. Again, Plibersek, the minister in charge, was reportedly never brought into this decision. She did a deal with the Greens. And then Albanese, in a meeting that didn't include her, that included Katie Gallagher and the Greens, killed it off. Now, Albanese has presented different versions of events of what happened. He even tried to claim a deal was never struck, or at least not with him. Have a look.
On these environment laws, clearly a deal was either close or, according to the Greens, was done. They reckon you'd agreed to it.
Well, of course they'd say that. No, we hadn't, and they don't say that, David. There is no one in the Greens says that I agreed to it.
And David Spears said he'd done a draft agreement, or he'd seen a draft agreement between Plibersek and the Greens. Albanese denied it again, or said it wasn't with him.
There's no draft agreement to me, and what we did was make sure...
You're saying that letter doesn't exist?
Well, no letter to me exists. I was negotiating across the parliament, and that's how you have to do it. Okay. You can't have 45 sets of negotiations.
But a letter from the minister to the Greens, that you're saying you weren't aware of that?
Well, that wasn't a letter from me.
I mean, this is splitting hairs. She's his cabinet minister. There was clearly an agreement between Plibersek on behalf of the Albanese government and the Greens. But how can anyone believe anything this bloke says? You've just seen how he twists and turns. Albanese has rejected suggestions that he was treating Tanya Plibersek poorly as minister.
When you told them there was no deal on this, it was you, Adam Bant, Sarah Hanson-Young, but not...
And Katie Gallagher.
OK, but not Tanya Plibersek, the minister. Why not?
Because we had 45 pieces of legislation, David.
I've had some of your caucus colleagues express to me a view that Tanya Plibersek was unnecessarily treated badly.
So Plibersek had done a deal, and Albanese and his mate Katie Gallagher undid it. So where does this leave Tanya Plibersek and her authority? This is disastrous disunity at the highest levels of the Albanese government, leaking going on to the ABC ahead of an interview with the Prime Minister, from his own colleagues. And now he's facing ongoing questions about a rift. And this is...
How are things between you and Tanya Plibersek now, though? Because there's still confusion from some over what happened here and talk of an internal feud. Can you categorically deny that?
Absolutely. There's still some... It's extraordinary that the media want to concentrate on what didn't happen as opposed to what did happen.
Always criticising the media. But the problems extend to other areas as well. There's reports today that tensions are flaring between the pair, between Albanese and Plibersek, over the controversial issue of salmon farming in Tasmania. And I'm going to talk about that with Joe Hildebrand and Steve Price in a moment. But clearly, on the environment laws, there was a deal that Albanese scuppered. Perhaps it didn't bother him that he'd step all over Plibersek. They've been political rivals for years. But Tanya Plibersek is reportedly pretty angry about how this unfolded. And meanwhile, the sense voters have is that they're not being told the truth. I mean, wouldn't it have been better for Albanese to say, yep, WA was unhappy about these laws, it was going to cost us votes at the next election, so we dumped them? Isn't it better for him to be honest with Australians instead of muddling up excuses and getting caught out trying to twist the truth? Because voters are smart, certainly smarter than Albanese, that's for sure. And we can see easily through his shenanigans.